I've criticized the WBC for a lot of things they've done over the years, and I'm sure I'll criticize them for things in the future. But I got to give credit where credit is due, and there's a number of things which the WBC have done in recent years that I have to applaud. One of them is the introduction of their clean boxing program. And another one is this, which has just been revealed by the WBC. It is called their new weight management program. There are four main points to this weight management program. Number one, mandatory disclosure of both fighters' weight at the time of agreement for a fight. The promoter must require each boxer and their management to submit to the WBC the precise weight that he or she has at the time of signing a bout. Number two, the WBC will continue with the 30 and 7-day weigh-in, but also instituted a 14-day weight check, and the percentages have been modified as follows. 30-day weigh-in, 10%. 14-day weigh-in, 5%. 7-day weigh-in, 3%. The WBC will circulate a memo with the updated fine and penalties for non-compliance. Now, before I continue on to the third and fourth points, my understanding of these percentages, and please correct me if I've got this wrong, is that this is the amount you're allowed to weigh over the weight limit. So let's say the fight's at middleweight, 30 days out from the fight, you're not allowed to weigh more than 10% over the middleweight limit. That's my understanding of it. And to be honest, I think this is a really good thing, because rather than do it by pounds, like for example, you're not allowed to weigh more than whatever the IBF do it. Is it 10 pounds over the weight limit? That is, something which it's not really a good way to prevent fighters from dehydrating, because, for example, 10 pounds to someone who's a lightweight is it gives them far more leeway than 10 pounds when someone is, let's say, a light heavyweight or a cruiserweight. Because when you're a cruiserweight, 10 pounds isn't as large a percentage of your body mass as it is when you're a lightweight. You understand? So it's not exactly fair. Doing it by percentages like this is a more accurate and fair way of having these check weights, in my opinion. So if I've got this right, and it's, you're not allowed to weigh more than 10% over the weight limit, 5%, 3%, depending whether it's 30, 14, or 7 days prior to the bout, I think that's good. Anyway, moving on to point number 3. The promoter must arrange with local boxing commission and WBC supervisor to have a scale ready at the site of the bout in order to have both boxers weigh upon the day of the fight, upon arrival the day of the fight. So the fighters will actually be weighed, and this is mandatory. You have to be weighed when you arrive at the venue, and it says here, boxers must not exceed 10% from the official weigh-in. So again, they're implementing what the IBF has done, but rather than say you're not allowed to weigh a certain amount of pounds over, you're not allowed to weigh more than 10% above the weight limit. I think this is a great thing that the WBC are bringing in here. And the fourth point for this weight management program is the WBC reserves the right to impose any of the following penalties for non-compliance. A warning, fines of up to $5,000 for number 1 and 2. And number 1 and 2 are the disclosure of the weight at the time of signing for the bout, and also the check weights 30, 14, and 7 days prior to the bout. So $5,000 is not really a big deterrent, is it, for people not complying with the first two? That has to be said. I mean, it depends on the fighter, but many championship fighters, and I'm not sure who exactly all this is going to apply to. I guess it's anybody ranked by the WBC at all, or is it anybody in the top 15? I'm not sure. But there are going to be fighters who, many fighters in the WBC top 15 who are not losing any sleep over $5,000. But either way, They have the right to impose any of the following penalties: fine of up to $5,000 for number 1 and 2, withdrawal of sanctioning of a bout, or up to 30% penalty on the purse of for number 3. So if the fighter weighs more than 10% over the weight limit, he can get a 30% penalty from his purse. That is a pretty big deterrent for most fighters. The top level guys, some of them are not going to be that bothered, but a lot of fighters are going to be bothered if 30% is coming out of their purse if they weigh more than 10% over the weight limit on the day of the fight upon arrival at the venue. So this is one of the most radical changes I've seen a sanctioning body make in quite some time with regards to this whole weight issue, because the reason they're implementing this is to prevent fighters from draining themselves by a ridiculous amount, which we know does go on in boxing a hell of a lot. This is a way of trying to make it as difficult as possible for fighters to fight at an artificially low weight. But as good as these measures are, I still can't understand why you can't just test the fighters' hydration levels on the day of the fight. Because there are going to be some fighters who are crazy or desperate enough to ensure they comply with all of this and step in the ring half dead. That's going to happen. Some fighters are so, like I say, crazy and desperate, or just unconcerned with their own well-being, that they will go to these insane lengths just to get in there, not pay any penalties, and have a fight go ahead. And I mean, come down from all kind of crazy weights and comply with all these rules and put their health at risk. You know, there are fighters who are still going to do all this. Some fighters will say, you know what, the WBC is becoming too difficult. I'll have to move up in weight if I want to fight for one of their titles or be ranked by them. But a lot of fighters will still go, and dehydrate themselves massively. So I'm not a medical doctor. I don't understand what tests you need to do for, to find out someone's hydration levels. But we live in the 21st century. The technology today is incredible. Surely there's some way of checking the hydration levels of a fighter on the day of the fight. And I don't think that should be done instead of these measures. I think it should be done in addition to these measures. But be that as it may, what the WBC are doing is very good here. Making sure that you can't weigh more than 10% over the weight limit on the day of the fight. And if you do, that's 30% off your purse. So that right there is a good measure to try and dissuade fighters from draining themselves as much as a lot of them do. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about this particular story. Again, I am just as critical of the WBC as anybody else in terms of their ranking, their implementation of mandatories, the favoritism they seem to show towards certain fighters. I'm just as critical about them as anybody else. But when they do something good, I have to be fair and balanced, and I have to give them their just dues. And from what I can see, they're really leading the way when it comes to the sanctioning bodies making reforms for the safety of fighters, both with the clean boxing program to try and weed out drug cheats, and also with this new weight management program. Now, of course, you've got situations like with Canelo Alvarez where he was busted, but somehow the WBC concluded that it really was contaminated beef, and Canelo was exonerated within a couple of days, to my if my memory serves me correct, he was exonerated by the WBC a couple days after he was caught. Now, a lot of people find that very, very suspect and very dubious. And I do too, to be honest. But it's never going to be a perfect situation. But these measures are going to help to some extent. That's what I believe. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.